And here we go. It is October 10th, I think, 6:30, and it's the monthly modern asset management discussion on cash flow investing in real estate and notes, held the second Wednesday of every month. You can find us on Meetup under that title, Cash Flow Investing. My name's Steve Hodgden, and I'm joined by my partner, Nick Curry. Together, we run a little lending business that does a lot of subprime paper. We own mortgages. We own rentals. We've done some land development, some spec builds, as we've been finding our way in the marketplace. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining in. Particularly looking for feedback when we run through this and questions. This is a discussion on a basic example of a partial. This is selling a piece of a mortgage. All right, so I'm going to use a live example that we have right now. Let's see. Oh, the disclaimer, we are not attorneys or CPAs. We are not giving advice or selling securities. And that's a huge thing. We are not selling securities.
We can't.
No, that's right. And I never want to. We're building a community of like-minded, truth-telling investors to grow our incomes together. I started doing these meetups about 1.5 years ago after just getting incensed at some of the things I saw that was being offered to people in the marketplace. And I came and told the truth on a couple of deals that I did that I didn't like. And we try to do the same sort of thing going on. So let's see. If any of you could take a peek down at the toolbar at the bottom, and if your microphone is on, could you please click the mute button on the microphone? So, partials.
You're starting with one of the most going from the community. We're all in this together. This is probably one of the most complex concepts that is spoken in commonplace that I've seen.
Good. I'm not the only one that's confused by this, right? I've sold a couple of partials. I have not bought any yet. But I wanted to take a look at this, and I do these webinars on topics that I need to work on. So unless you guys suggest things that you want to talk about, that you want to learn more about, I'm going to keep pulling out things that I need to know. And like Nick said, a partial is a confusing thing. So some say partials are securities. I'm not a lawyer, so don't take my advice. But I believe that if you take possession of a thing, like a promissory note, it is not a security. That means that if I had a mortgage and I wanted to sell part of it to John and part of it to Eric and part of it to Nick, then I have created a security. I've basically created shares in an entity. Partials, when you buy a partial, you're also not lending money. You're buying or selling a payment stream from a promise to pay, from a promissory note, from some other third party. Partials can make sense or maybe not, depending on your goals. There's some things that are that it doesn't make sense to buy a partial on a note that's only good for a year. There isn't a lot of return. There's different reasons to do these and different things to not. I like them. The partials that I've sold, I like them because I've got the back end of the partial sitting in a trust that's earmarked for inheritance by my children. So I don't need the money today. So this is where Nick's going to step in. And what if your goal, as me, the buyer, was to earn interest for 6 years at above typical bank rates, secured by real estate? But I didn't want to be a landlord. I didn't want to be a whole mortgage holder. I just wanted to have money come into my bank account every month.
I think the common example of people being interested in parcels is that they can get into the note investing space with a smaller capital commitment. They don't have $100,000 to buy a note. They might have $10,000, $20,000.
Mhm.
Is that accurate too?
Yeah, and I also like it from the point of view. So this mortgage that we're going to talk about, we created, is what's it? It's 11 years because we've had some payments into it already. And you may not want to jump into mortgages for the first time with an 11-year commitment. Maybe you want to step in to a shorter term and decide if mortgage investing is what you want to do with your self-directed IRA. So a way to do that is to buy the front end of a mortgage and see. So this is one of the people. One of the people on this call is the person that rehabbed this property. And we then sold it on a seller finance contract after collecting the appropriate down payment and a year plus of rents. And so this is what we own. This is Woodley, Nick. And so if you want to talk about this is what we did, you want to walk through what the terms are?
Why don't you actually run this one?
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I collected this payment today. So no, this payment came in on the 1st. That's so we wrote a first mortgage for $50,000 and a second mortgage that starts after the first is paid in 11 years, and that second is sitting in that, again, like I said, in an inheritance account. And I'm considering maybe I want to sell a piece of the first or all of the whole first to use to reinvest to do another project in Pensacola. It's a first mortgage that is 136 months when it started. It's a 10% interest loan. It's a subprime borrower. She has a FICO, I think, like 560 plus. And the monthly payment is $677.58 of principal and interest. So if you were a passive investor and you wanted to keep your horizon short, maybe you'd want to buy 6 months or 6 years of payments at a 10% yield. So you can, one of the things you'll see in this marketplace is prices bounce around, but they typically change in yield based on the risk in the asset. So if we had a $78,000 origination and you're going to buy a small piece of it, you're going to buy less than half of this mortgage. So your investment to value is going to be sub 50%.
But your loan to value could still be.
Well, my loan to value is the 55,000 versus the 78. But if you bought, as we're going to see a number that's going to talk about a purchase approximation of what something like this would trade for, then you look at your investment to value differently. This is what the amortization table looks like from an HP 10B2 calculator. Unfortunately, it's much larger than the slide because it runs out for 136 lines. But it's I just plug the numbers in so you can see this is what your interest on a monthly basis right here is $458, and you get this return of capital every month. So this interest column is really what you're earning, and you're getting your money back as you go. So again, as from a standpoint of dipping your toe in the water and deciding if this is for you, you're getting your money back pretty fast. You're collecting $7,000 plus a year of your investment of this back in total. You're getting 677 times 12. And so like I said, I arbitrarily took this loan, and I said, well, if there's 136 payments and the present value is 55,000, and I'm going to earn $37,000 if all the payments are made on time, no late fees, et cetera, my total yield on that, my total return on that will be $92,000 over the 11 years. So I thought, well, what could I do if I sold a piece of this loan? So if I sold 6 years of it at the flat interest rate that I purchased it at, that I created, then the present value of that would be $36,000, and the investor who purchased that over that 6-year period would have a return of $48,800. It's one of those boring money just comes in kinds of things, and that's where I just I can't do that, right, Nick? I made it, and now I've made it, I've created it. Now I want to go make another one, right? And for $36,000, that's a down payment on starting to build a $200,000 house in Pensacola. So that could be my seed money with a loan to build a new house, or I could buy an inner city entry level piece of property, clean it up, and do something again. And that's what we did with this property. We have our basis in this is after rent payment for a year plus is a little less than the value of the first mortgage, and so then what would happen at the end of the 6 years? The note returns back to me, and this is what the remaining term would pay out to me. Well, Modern would collect $43,000. So Modern's yield would be $36,000 right away, plus 43. Darn it! Now I need to go backwards. Hang on. Plus this 43,000, so we would net. That's basically what's that? $80,000. Right? If I held on to the thing the entire time, I'd make 92. So why would I do that? Because I want to go play with this money. Right? So. So why is a partial good for an example like a self-directed IRA investor? As we should know, a self-directed IRA investor can't actively manage assets inside of his portfolio. He can trade, but he can't manage a rental property. He can't manage a construction project. It has to be like he owns a share of Apple, and all he can do is sit and watch Apple pay dividends. So this is for investors that want passive income. Oops, I keep clicking my button. I want passive income. I like partials because of the lower investment to value. I've bought many notes that their real value was much less than I thought when I purchased them. I bought older properties in need of a lot of work, and this also fits the old adage of that short term provides safety, and you always want to borrow long and lend short. So why would I do this? Because we get immediate cash. We get to keep control of the asset, because I have an 11-year, 9-year, that's something like a 10-year second sitting behind this first, and I don't want that to get away, because that's my profit in this construction and sale project. So, and even if I'm keeping the remaining 64 months of this loan, and the note goes sour and the borrower doesn't pay, if you were to foreclose, all you'd be entitled to is your $40,000 excuse me, of recovery. You get all your interest and principal, and then the debt's extinguished, it becomes unsecured. And so in one instance that I had of these, when the note went south, I immediately reimbursed the borrower, the person who bought the loan, because I wanted the property back. and we got that property back. Took us 2 months to rehab it, another month to get a new tenant in it, and we're starting the process all over again. So this puts almost all of the risk on the seller, because he's dependent on the completion of the first in order to make his money. Oftentimes loans like this will get refied, and then everybody gets paid.
Steve, that one caveat you talked about in the event of foreclosure, from what I've seen, the term in those partial agreements that if there is any foreclosure or default, they will buy it back. That's like a standard. Most partial agreements have that in place. Is that true?
What I promise in a foreclosure, when a note goes to default and is heading toward foreclosure, what I promise to do is make the borrower payments to the investor who holds the second, who holds the first, while I'm working through the foreclosure. So I can either, if it's easier for me to buy it back, otherwise I'm paying 10% interest on that money. We can also transfer, we can what's called carrying the mortgage. We can carry the mortgage to a like or better property. I would never, as an investor buying a partial, want to go from a 50% loan to value deal to a 100% loan to value deal. I would only want to improve my position by either having the same investment to value or having the mortgage be on a better property. We do seconds, and we've done some thirds with our own capital. I don't think that that's anywhere anybody, certainly who's new, should be playing. This is our rule number one in this meetup group is don't lose money. And the reason I've got that as rule number one is Warren Buffett said it. Warren Buffett says it, and I ignored it for a long time. So we're now looking at every deal, making sure that the upside's better than the downside, and that we know when things go bad, how we would get out. So there's many ways to buy notes. You can buy them on the tertiary market. You can buy them on Loan MLS, Trust FCI Exchange. You can buy them from brokers. You can buy them from trade desks at houses like Granite and Security National. I've become more and more comfortable in creating our own paper because we know the inventory that we're working in. Either we've built the house or we've bought it and rehabilitated it, and we know it inside out. So that tells me I know what it is when I get it back. That little house that we took back a few months ago, they were good people. We really liked them. They never missed a rent payment or a mortgage payment for 26 months. Never missed, never late. When we got back into that house, we were aghast at how they were living. That you shouldn't be raising children in that kind of squalor. So it took us $8,000 to put that house back together to make it rent ready and up to snuff for the next renter. That was a little $600 a month full price deal. We put a new tenant in there at $650, which was, the market had shifted a little bit, and we were able to do that. That renter has a lease option after making 12 payments on time. So you can do partials lots of different ways. This $77 payment stream, for example, you could buy half of it You could buy, I want to buy $300 a month of payments, and you could do the math and figure out what the offer would be on that. You could, this is where we get complicated, Nick. You can buy the back end. We could change places. And why would we ever do that, right? Why would we give up the back 6 years of a loan? And why would you want it? You'd want it because you're 30 years old and you could stick it inside of an IRA, and you can't touch the money for another 30 years anyway.
Yep. That was the point of the way you structured deal. Yeah, absolutely. Steve, would you mute one of the active microphones?
Yeah, let me find out who that is. Hang on.
No, that's exactly it. I think the incentive is really driven by one of two things. The examples that Steve pointed out were really for liquidity and being able to sell. Your interest in the loan creates a liquidity event where you can go out and do it again. That specific example wasn't a $55,000 note that was bought for par. It was one that was created. So the basis in the property was obviously a lot less because the company was the property investor. I think what I see out in the marketplace when people talk about these crazy returns on partials are notes that they bought at a discount. It could be an attractive yield in the teens to begin with, and they found someone that had a appetite for a 6 or 8% return, and they cashed in by selling a big portion of those payments up front, got almost all of their money back, and they're paying them a 6 or 8% yield and keeping maybe the last third of the payments.
Right. And you see that in the tertiary mortgage market where people are, like we're improving the property, people improve the paper, and we do that too, where you take a delinquent note that you bought it, like you said, at a deeper discount, you get them performing again, and then you sell that note at the market trade rate for a performing note. What I've seen there is what people call performing. There's a category I've heard about that I've seen called semi-performing or sub-performing. You're either performing or you're not performing, and I define that as default, not delinquency. Missing a month, missing a closing date, getting the money in on the 10th instead of the 1st, that kind of thing. But missing, being in default, like having a notice of default filed, then catching up, making a couple payments, that's that person's going to go in default again. And we own some of those, and they take work. And I think partials are a way to make, like you said, an 8% return and take the work out of it.
Make sure that in the event of something like that, you have recourse.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So if you were going to look at you looked at an amortization table on a loan like this, and you looked at it 8 years out, and you saw, or 6 years out, and you saw that the principal remaining was $25,000, you wouldn't pay the $25,000. You wouldn't pay $25,000. You'd want to figure a net present value on your money, right? Right. So if you're gonna take the back end of something, you want to make sure that you've calculated in what your opportunity cost is if you had that money sitting actively working someplace. Right. And you can do that in your handy dandy, where is it? We should all have one of these in our phones. This is the Inaday HP 10B2 app, and Nick doesn't use one of these because he carries an Excel computer with him wherever he goes. So you'd run a calculation that would say, well, how much money am I buying? What am I buying, and how do I discount that at 8% a year, right?
And really, yeah, you could just look at the cash flow stream. I'm always and even considering the opportunity, there's a whole other series of questions, like you said, Steve. Understanding the asset, understanding what the real value of it is. Is it actually performing?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can do the math all day as well. But there's a whole other picture and due diligence that can protect yourself in contract, but really make sure that you understand the asset up front as well.
Yeah. So that's actually there's somebody on the group now. I see that we're going to talk after about some other mortgages that we're selling, and he went through a list of a dozen performing mortgages that we had, and he picked out 3 to discuss that we're going to do after with this. And when I looked at the names that he chose, I didn't even recognize them. So we clearly went through and picked all the ones that didn't have any collection notes. So, this last point. If you're going to buy the front end, you should look for an option to buy again. So you should, if you can tie that up. I'm not sure I'd give you that. But you'd want an option to go and buy again. Another reason to look at shorter term paper is interest rates are creeping up right now, and making 8 to 10% on an investment today is a great deal. My mortgage on my first house was 14%. So 10% today may not be so hot 20 years from now. I think we're still in a relatively stable market for money. I don't think we're gonna, we're not going from, we've gone from 3.5 to 5. We're not going to go to 15. So. You want to look at any of these, since this is what we talk about a lot, because we talk about what went wrong.
These are always the fun ones.
Yeah, like you said, what if it's not worth what you thought, right?
Better hope you're protected in your contract.
Yeah.
Get your money back, and your person you transacted with will actually perform.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing who you're working with.
Yeah, and so when I look for trading partners as a buyer, I look for people that were in business or have a story from 2007 to 10. Not people that just jumped into the market in 2011 and think they're geniuses. I thought I was a genius in 2005. I did. I say on every one of these things, I bought a shopping center in 2006 that was worth half of what I paid for it in 2008. And Nick stood on that property with me one day, and it was kind of dark and lonely, it was 45,000 square feet, and 20,000 feet of it was lights out. So, if the borrower defaults, that's something that goes wrong with high-priced paper. Making sure that the seller has as much or more to lose than you is probably a good idea. And when you buy a note in the open market, once the deal's done, the broker makes his money, they're happy. So borrowers file bankruptcy. That scares folks. I've been a collection guy since, this is coming up on 38 years. And bankruptcies are just inconvenience. Bankruptcies just add more time. You have a first position lien on a piece of property, at least the day that you bought the loan, is worth twice as much as what it was worth that day. So you're, after taxes, you get paid. So making sure that loans are recorded properly. You have to know how to read paperwork. You have to know how to talk to county. You have to go get county records. You have to know. A lot of that comes from, like you were talking about, is counterparty risk is a huge thing in this niche. There's no barriers to entry to be a loan broker. All you have to do is, say I'm a loan broker, and you're a loan broker. Let's see, and what else do I have? You have to read. You have to take the time to read the papers and make sure that you understand. You have to be able to use your calculator and make sure that your numbers match up with what's on the loan documents. I use competing software, and my loans don't always match up because I forget to use beginning or ending date. I keep doing this, so I have to fiddle with them till I get them matched up. Really check and make sure the property taxes are paid, and when they're coming up next. When's the next risk of default on property taxes? I paid a lot of property taxes on mortgages last year. And then the borrower doesn't keep up insurance coverage. You want to be named as an additional insured on the insurance policy. I'm ambivalent about that these days. I just canceled all my force-placed insurance on 15 loans. Nick, I canceled all the force-placed insurance on all of our mortgages last week. Okay. We talked about it for several months, and I finally realized that if any of those $30,000 mortgages I have burns to the ground, I'm okay being self-insured. I've owned a mortgage pool for 28 months now, or 26 months, and nothing's caught fire yet. We've had a couple of hurricanes, and everybody's still standing. So it's an inordinate expense and a burden to the borrower, and I just assume they have that money to make principal and interest payments. So we're going to go up to questions for in a minute, but we want to talk about if you want to find these recordings, you can find them on YouTube. They're under my name, Steve Hodgdon. The company website is Modern Asset Management. The name of this meetup group, for those of you who didn't come through the meetup group, is Cash Flow Investing in Real Estate and Notes. And you find that, of course, on Meetup. And now I've outed Nick, so everybody knows how to get a hold of Nick, because he likes talking to people too. So that's our discussion about.
In exchange, I get the first few questions. On the topic of making sure, obviously, the first lien that you're buying, the cash flow stream to is recorded. If I was a first-time investor buying a partial, would I also want that document recorded?
You want to record an assignment of mortgage. You want to record an assignment of mortgage. The way it works to make sure that everybody's happy is if it's you and I, and it's Pensacola, you and I are going to create another assignment of mortgage document. I'm going to take the mortgage itself and I'm going to endorse it over to you on the back, and that paperwork is going to go to Brazlow Title, where they will hold that mortgage for 6 years and a day, and then execute your signature on the back that says, at the end of these payments, return to Modern Asset Management. And at that point, they will file the appropriate paperwork to release you as the lien holder, which I'm then automatically put back in the first position, and then they will either return that mortgage to me or hold the mortgage and promissory note until, if I want them to hang on to it. The expense for doing that is really nominal. The title companies do that for a small fee because it ties you to them when the property trades. Your paperwork's at Brazlow Title. Who are you going to use to sell your property? You're going to use Brazlow Title. Was that the question? Right. What is it that you hold? You're holding an original promissory note and an original mortgage and you have a recording of an assignment of mortgage and an allonge. The allonge is not a recorded instrument. That is a setting over of the promissory note. And then, but then also there's the rest of the paperwork to return it at the end of the term. So.
And that was my second point. Speaking of paperwork, I know I have a pretty thick list of template documents for structuring deals like this, and just reading them gives you a pretty thorough understanding of how these are structured. But I don't know if that's something we can share, not depending on where we got them from. But is there anybody in the Bigger Pockets community that you would suggest as the maven on this topic?
I use documents that I've learned in courses that I took that came out of time at Paper Source University. Bill Moncaro distributes a lot of information on how to do these. I also walked through, took some lessons from another gray-haired guy in Texas named Tom Henderson. And he was very helpful and gave me full files and said, and, taught me how to do it. I see a note out here from Jim. Hi, Jim. I haven't talked to you in forever.
Hey, Jim.
Do you have a separate agreement regarding option to buy back? In the note sale agreement, there's a couple of paragraphs that talk exactly about these terms, that it's my option to either continue the payments on the borrower's behalf or to buy the note back. But your responsibility is, in the event of default, you have to notify me. And at the day that you notify me, then I've got a couple of days to cure. And because we're tiny, we're a little, I don't know, a little several $1 million in the marketplace group. We know who these borrowers are. The ones in Florida, we're on first name basis with. I've stood on their porches. I've shaken hands. I go to Florida a couple of times a year, and I drive and say hi and say thank you. So it's a different world than what the big players are doing. So it's in the agreement that it's my option. Either I make the payments or I give you back your money at wherever you are in your amortization table. So schedule. You've got a 6-year note, and wherever you are in that principal table is where we buy you back at.
And I think that to Jim's question, I think that from what I've seen in the documents, that works both ways, where there's a forced buyback for recourse in the event of foreclosure, but there's also, I've seen the seller actually had their option to buy back the cash flow stream from you at any point.
Yes. Sorry. And again, from using Bill Moncaro's documentation and some reading that I've done, following an old note guy named Henry Dvorak, the contract reads that if I want it back, I have to give you 110%. If you want out for any reason other than default, then I'll give you 90%. So if either one of us wants out of the contract for a voluntary non-default reason, it's going to cost us a 10% penalty. So you get into the space, you hate it, you want out, you decide you want to go play slot machines. Then you can get your money back, and what it should be is the interest that you've earned brings you back to zero. So you get to learn and not have to pay to go to school. So all right, Nick, and then look at that. Jim said thanks. You're welcome, Jim. Jim and I, when I was brand new in this space, a couple of years ago, we bought a pool of accounts. I think we bought 5, and Jim took 1, and I took a couple, and another buyer up in LA took a couple, and so anyway, and I think, and so it's good to see you back around. I really, I need to make time. I need to make time. I'm gonna be back down south second half of this month, so let's see if we can at least connect and talk for a bit. What else we got?
We'll also be over at the Masters of Real Estate here in about 4 weeks in Las Vegas. Anyone else is interested in that show, let us know so we can get together.
Yeah, that's a great conference. That's a great conference. That's Masters of Real Estate. It's you look up Gary Johnston, Johnston.com. It's a 3-day event, and it's lots of the old dogs that are out on the circuit. Fortunato and Schaub and Tony Alvarez, Dykes Boddiford. Like I said, all the guys that are a generation ahead of me. And it's they run Friday, Saturday, and half a Sunday, and you probably spend 24 hours in classroom over that period of time. You think the only time you notice you're in Vegas is at like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night when you leave the conference room.
Just put a link in the group chat for anybody who wanted to check it out, because it is a little bit hard to find through Gary Johnson's website, but there's the information there. It's relatively, I was surprised, given the content and really the roster of legendary speakers. It's relatively affordable. So check it out.
It is. Yeah. Gary works at getting information out as cheaply as possible, and there's very little pitch. It's mostly this is what I do and this is what I learned. So so got anybody else? Any last minutes? Any burning desires? Let's see. We have a promise for John and Nick. They're going to talk. I'm gonna, when we finish up here, I'm gonna get on the phone and talk to Jim about 3 mortgages that he may buy 1, 2, or 3. I owe Jim a phone call. I'll do that when I get back down to Orange County. Jim's a neighbor down there. We got anybody else? All right. So appreciate everybody coming on this month. If you've got anything you want to talk about in real estate and notes, we're always looking for topics. We got rate hikes, we've got softening, we've got days on market increasing, we got all kinds of stuff. We had, what do we have, an 830 point drop in the Dow today. That was exciting. And who knows where we go. But anyway, like I said, I want to thank all of you for coming. And with that, you think we're ready to sign off?
Ready to sign off. Do you have any questions on partials before we get back to this topic? How to get a hold of us. Yep. Be happy to help.
Okay. All right. And we're always looking for deals. So if you got something that way, we should talk to. All right. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. All right. Talk to you again. Bye-bye.